Welcome to this course on the Pythagorean numerology. Over the next 3 days, we'll be learning about his Pythagorean teachings and the system that can give us a glimpse of ourselves through the world of numbers. The number mysticism system itself is a holistic method of self-awareness. It is holistic because it does not look at the physical and spiritual contents, but at the spiritual contents. In other words, we can decode the spiritual higher processes in a human being on the basis of numbers, those invisible, inaudible, and therefore not perceivable by the senses, energies that no other system can do, only holistic systems. The way this course is going to work is that I am going to explain the 9 basic numbers in the first part. That's the 9 from 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the 11, 22 master numbers, because Pythagoras said that there are energies already around us that are the energies of the world beyond man, and he called them master numbers. On the third day, we will learn about the methodology itself, i.e., how to extract information on personality from a formula with a holistic approach. The Pythagorean system is also a fate analysis, only I don't like to use it for fate analysis because you will see that even the best fate analyst cannot tell from a system what will happen to us next week. There are 2 reasons for this. If you cannot know your destiny, you cannot go to the best analyst or the best yogi. You will not know your destiny because you have to live your destiny. But the one who can know his destiny will never go to a destiny analyst because he is already in a state of zero, that is, in a state of allowing, so that he doesn't care what happens to him. The reason I say zero is that the Pythagoras says that zero is when you emerge from your ego to a state of enlightenment or grace. It is zero when you have allowed your destiny to take its course. So I am going to teach you what destiny analysis is, that you can read out from numbers, approximate events, or events that you can prepare for, but it may not happen at the time you read it out to yourself, and it may not affect you as you think it will. Because you may look at a future event now, say in 2024, and say, well, it's very good that it's happening to me, but in 2024, you'll be on a completely different level of consciousness, and it won't be so good if it happens, and let's turn it around. We see something as wrong now, and then in 2024, it will be a relief that it will happen to you. So that's what these 3 days look like. Before we explore the world of number 1, I'll show you how this system works. On this slide, I wrote down what numerology is. The quote, "Know thyself," is on the Delphi's oracle inscription. This is a system in reverse. For the Delphi's oracles were initiated priests and priestesses, and they did not encourage us to know the ego, but to know the world beyond the ego, that is, our soul and our spirituality. It says, "Enter my temple and know the world that is invisible," that is, not what is here now and can be described by your ego, but step beyond it. However, numerology is able to take that step. So I cannot go up the mountain without first climbing the steps, that is, without knowing my ego. Do you understand? So we can only push the spiritual gates if we are first aware of our physical limitations. I wrote here that your ego is your framework. Your destiny, your desires, and your experiences set the stage for the evolution of your soul. What does this mean? The ego itself provides a framework for a person's personality in a holistic sense. In other words, what day of the month you were born, what numbers are in your formula, what sum it gives you. A methodical analysis can give you a look at the workings of your ego or personality. In other words, the framework you have been given in your life now and what you need to do, how you need to function. But it's a stage. It's a play. Isn't it Shakespeare who says, life is a play and on your own stage you are the protagonist? And numerology is not the only system that works. You can read that out of astrology and chronobiology, a lot of things, but I think it's the simplest holistic system that works. You can see how you work. You're looking at that stage, which is your stage. You see your own roles in it. You see who else is on your stage, and you step away a little bit after a while, and you don't get stuck in it. You look at it from the outside. This is the basis of the spiritual path of development, by the way, to step out of this ego-based consciousness. And if you step out of your ego, it's always a big question. Is the ego really a bogeyman, and does it really need to be eradicated? Well, no. The ego is not to be eradicated. It is to be known, to be seen. Some people have 70 years, 80 years, and even then they can't see their ego. At the moment of death, everyone sees their ego, right? So at the last moment, I see the dying person at the time of agony. He sees what happened to him and why it happened. However, a system like this is such a gift, such a blessing, because you can see sooner how you have been functioning. That's why you can do it earlier. Step out of it and be an observer. That's why I wrote to you that the stage as God, you are watching. It's a very interesting level of consciousness when you can do that. It's not that your ego ceases to exist, but you don't become a victim of your ego, that is, of what's happening, but you become a peaceful spectator. This is peaceful contemplation. I think that in the last 11 years that I've been doing these courses, maybe that's what's different about this teaching or this course that I'm doing now, is that something has obviously happened to me in those 11 years. What I'm experiencing now in the last 6 months is that my meditations are much stronger and longer than they have been in years past. I spend an hour to an hour and a half a day in meditation, and I've had experiences that I didn't have before. I will tell you about that. What this means is that when you look at my own life, I'm still not calm. I was asked by someone a few days ago, I received an email saying, "Dear Anita, if I take your course, will I be able to find out about my life and solve the problems and be happier?" I wrote to her that if she comes to this course, she would have a view on her life, but she will not be able to solve it. So she'll realize that there are bumps and lumps, but that won't solve anything, and he won't be happier. Because this knowledge, this academic knowledge, will help you to the extent that you can see who you are, but the fact that someone can see who they are does not make them a better person. The next step is the effort. So I'm trying to cut down those sick leaves, which we've talked about a lot, those negative functions. You start to cut down on those negative functions with effort, with constant attention. But even then, you're not a perfect human being, because you can't be perfect as a human being because you're a human being. And the third is that some kind of spiritual practice has to be put in. No matter how much spiritual people avoid it, no matter how much they say that I am now doing my 100th course and I am still not at peace. The thing is, systems are good to know, but after a while you will see that they are analogous to each other. So they will not take you downwards, they will take you left and right. So they will develop your academic knowledge horizontally. So I'll study numerology for 2 years, astrology for 4 years, something else for 6 years, and there will be a lot of that. But we don't go down, which means up. That's why I say, and that's why I've brought methods, that everyone has to find their own meditative method that works for them. Every character has a good method, because that's where everybody wants to start from the inner peace. It forms a dumpling inside you first. It's hard to find a symbol for this. I don't know if there are any active meditators in this group who do a regular spiritual practice. Because what you're seeing is that you're in some new field, but you don't know what it is. And then that field starts to open up more and more, and you can experience things from your world more and more fully. And there's a point where you can step into that particular gate of grace. That gate of grace is when you are somewhere very far away from your personality. And what happens to you there, or to your child, or to your partner, which is not good, because obviously good is easy to accept. What is not good, somehow you are no longer in it. You're like an observer who has stepped back. But it's not like you decide today, oh, I'm not going to go into the drama. If you're saying that because someone taught you that, or you read it in a book, you're getting more and more into it. You can't avoid the mental exercise. I call mental practice a meditative state. So when you go from alpha, first you go down to alpha, and then you approach the much smoother brain waves. You can go up to theta or beyond theta, and it can integrate to the two hemispheres of the brain. It feels like the state of mind of a meditative person. Now, this particular contemplative state, this peaceful contemplation of your world, that's what spiritual practice can do. What it looks at is either a lifetime's work that a completely honest person or a person who is honest with themselves admits, oh my God, this is how I operated. So either you are like that or you save yourself the time, and with a method like this you'll get an overview of yourself in 5 or 6 days. So that's the alpha and omega of holistic systems and how they work. And the ego can be identified by numerology, which is a holistic character and destiny analysis system. So I want to draw something for you. There are 15 manifestations in this room right now. This means that I am going to represent the ego with 15 black balls or black circles. The ego, the personality with a frame. That is the fixation, that is your framework for how you can function. Because certain topics, reactions, emotions determine every number. And you will know in a day or two which set of numbers you belong to. And you will never be able to leave that number. Never. You can do one thing. To move within that number. Up, down. But it also gives you a frame. But it's still your personality. And around it are the bigger envelopes. You know, the etheric bodies, the causal bodies, the souls, the spirits. And it goes on into infinity. Basically, numerology will draw you this black dot. That is your base from which you can move. And if you are able to feel home in that moving, you can operate a character well. Well, better and better, better and better. And you can accept the negative functioning of that character because it's in you. Then you can come back to zero. And the valve of zero is when you can step out into those. So zero, so you have to come back to the middle to be able to experience the outer worlds. That's what we're going to look at. Basically, I'm going to write down a number line for you now and show you where we need to get to in 3 days. Basically, I'm not going to analyze anybody because a lot of people are seeing or hearing this presentation. However, you yourselves will be able to analyze yourselves perfectly by the end of the 3rd day. But now I'm going to ask for a date. It doesn't matter who says, I'm not going to analyze, I want to show you something, someone's date. Oro 9:13. When we're doing numerology and I want to look at someone, yourself, or say your partner or your child, mostly someone you have some kind of spiritual or mental communion with, that's important. Then I'll draw this 8-digit date and see what the sum of that date is. I start adding them up one by one, and I'll show you how with this example. 1 plus 9 equals 10. 10 plus 6 equals 16. 16 plus 7 equals 23. Plus 9 equals 32. 33, 31, 35, 36. Right? 36. And I'll write 36 in red. It will make a difference why it's red. You don't need to know that now. Then I'll reduce it further. 3 plus 6 equals 9, and write it down. Then I'll make a numeroscope for Edith. We'll learn what a numeroscope or matrix means, and I'll write Edith's numbers in the right places. So far, so good. I wrote well because I didn't calculate that much. I was just looking. Okay, I've written in, and I'll write in the ones on the right side of the equation. 36 minus 9. That's what your matrix looks like, right? Okay, your matrix is done. Next, I'm going to create Edith's time pyramid, which looks like I'm building it from the bottom up. 9, 4, 5, 4, 9, 4, 5. That's good. Then I enter the years that are notable for her. 27, 36, 45, 54. How old are you, Edith? You will be 54? 53 then? I'll see where you are now. Still here? You're still here. I'll circle it. Then I'll make for the previous year, the previous personal year. For the previous year, because it is not yet September, 2 and 2 is 4, and 9 is 13, 14 is 15, 16, 17, 8. Okay, I'll circle that. You entered in at September. Today it's 4th June 2021, so we're very much at the end. So that means that in 2-3 months, you'll be in your 9th year. So that's what a baseline analysis looks like, which anyone can do by tomorrow afternoon for anyone. Now, the methodology of this, there are people here who have already taken a course. You know it's not difficult to learn. You could say the methodology is 1.5 to 3 hours. The difficult thing is to start reading from this strange system, to form words and sentences, to read out things that are the essence of numerology, not the methodology, but the depth of the very deep meaning of numbers, not the logical, rational understanding of it. And that's why I decided when I created this 3-day course that I was going to spend a lot more time dealing in the essence of numbers. And in the 1.5 hours that it takes to travel to the planet of a number, you can fully identify with the character and really get a feel for the energy of a number. Because when you're reading, you'll know very well what to look for. Why is this red? Why isn't it here? But what does it mean? Now that's where the science of numerology begins. And that's why in these 3 days we are going to spend a lot of time on the essence, on the meaning, and we'll deal with the methodology on the last day. Everyone will do this by 4 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. You and everyone else will obviously go home and be able to draw it up for your loved ones and read from it. Okay, I wanted to show you this, what we're going to learn. Then let's look at the first thing that I think is very important, and that's how numerological analysis begins, following Pythagoras, is that when you characterize a person in the first round, you always look at their character number. That becomes his most important characteristic. The character number is very decisive. I would say it is the most decisive in numerology. It's what day of the month you were born. In the case of Edith, her character number is 13, so her day number is the number 13. This is what Pythagoras calls her character number. See, I wrote it on the slide, the significance of the character number in numerology. The input, I'll write it down for you here, is the input because Pythagoras says that a person is given a single number, the number of his birthday, as a karmic task. That is, that number must be operated as best as possible during the incarnation. It is the task entrusted to him, and therefore, who is born on what day is the most important marker in the numerology system. However, each person is also given a destiny task, and that it is the sum of your equation. And this is important. I don't talk about it at the beginning of the course, but somewhere in the middle. However, I think it's important to see at the beginning that everyone has another notable number next to their character number, and that's the sum, in Edith's case, the 36-9 marker. You have been tasked to get to this number for the rest of your life and operate at its highest function. That is, Edith is from 13, so if you were to describe her, say, in numbers, she goes from 13 to 9. She got 80 years for that, or a certain number of years to make a good 9 out of 13 in this personality. Now, Pythagoras says that in order to make my own, I put it in a triangle because the triangle is the divine sign. So here sits God. This is your destiny. Here you can experience your unity within your personality. This 9 is the destiny of Edith. But you have been given 2 paths, 2 crutches, so you come to number 9 through this path of destiny. So the path of destiny for Edith is 3. Destiny path and the 6. So we have 2 destiny paths, the 3 and the 6, and through them we get to the 9. That will be her task. Obviously, we see that there are a lot of numbers that have been added here. They're going to be nuanced, detailed in their analysis. The analysis of her character and her destiny. But when you start to use the numbers, I don't know about you, many of you are familiar with this, the system. We get infected by meeting somebody, say the postman, or somewhere you buy your, I don't know, chicken drumsticks in the same place every time, and you ask them what day you were born. And you don't pay much attention to it. You're not going to go around with paper and write down the postman's whole matrix. But for me, someone telling me that he's a 13, he's a 12, he's a 22, etc., I've got an immediate idea of what he might know. I don't know what they can do within that, but I analyzed many people in the past 12 years. Based on 4 or 5 questions, I can guess where they are within that 12, 14. Because what does it mean that the fact he was born on 13 speaks to me? I have a frame. I know perfectly well, and you will know what that number means. If I have time, I'll even add up the full date in my head quickly. I no longer ask that, excuse me, for example, a clerk, tell me all your number sequence. But if there is time, I quickly add up. I can also see which way he should be heading, and even more accurately in my head where he is on its way. But if that's not possible, feel free to ask from postmen, co-workers, whoever, what day you were born, and you have a picture. You're not prying. So here, don't think that this goes against the spiritual laws. You're simply giving yourself a crutch because you know very well that the other number, because you know yours, works for you, right? So what can you expect? I would say from this number that I can expect a lot of good things here, right? Because I know my character, the number 13 is pretty analogous to mine because everybody's going to start their own, and immediately you're going to build a whole different communication, a different system of interaction. It can facilitate things, and if you find that number is incompatible with your number, it's difficult. Then whatever you're going to do here, you're going to have constant challenges there. So the first thing is to ask the character number, or be familiar with the character number, which is far from a numerology characterization. That's a crutch for you. We saw that Edith goes from 13 to a 36-9 destiny. That's the first thing to look at, and then comes the more complex and deeper analysis. So you see, according to the teachings of Pythagoras, the most important marker of a numerical sequence is our own solar number, or character number, that is, the day we were born. The character number, I'm going to erase this so I can draw it, is the character number of a person, so the day on which they were born, and this character number can be of 2 types. We're talking about a simple character and a complex character. A simple character is a person whose day number has a single number in it. That is born on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and so on, up to the 9th. That is from 1 to 9, because there is no other number. And we also include the tenfold of these. So if someone was born on the 10th, the 20th, or the 30th, but you see there is also one number here, 1, 2, or 3, but with tenfold energy. And we call it a composite character, somebody who is born in 2 numbers, and neither of the 2 numbers is 0. So for example, if someone is born on the 15th, that's what numerology calls a composite character. A composite character means that there are 2 ways that this person can function. They can function as the sum of the number, 1 plus 5, 1 plus 5, 6, or they can function as the full inner number. That's very important, as if that were their main character. It's a constant question. Is he then a character of 6 or 5, which is better? He can operate his 2 characters equally. Which one she operates better and where? It always manifests itself in human relationships. So a man alone, when he is sitting alone, his thoughts may determine whether he is now thinking as a 5 or a 6. But he will manifest himself through people and therefore in relationship. So that means that he is a composite character, the sum of 1 plus 5, so he is a man of character 6, or his inner number is 5. Where does number 1 go? Pythagoras numerology does not interpret the external number. For characterology says that it works like the ascendant. So it is your manifestation outwardly, but it is not significantly defined by the external number. So I don't count it either. It's going to be in the matrix, that's plenty. But when you're looking at the basic character, you don't have to deal with the external number. So you just have to look at what is the sum or what is the internal number, and you'll get a composite character. Now, there are notable numbers in numerology, namely those that can work in three ways. They are the more difficult character types to learn. These are the so-called master numbers, because Pythagoras says that there are energies that are new, unknown, different from the human energies we have known or are familiar with. These have been entrusted to people whose energetic scissors may be wider. Not necessarily broader, but they can be broader because they have been given the opportunity. The question is whether they should operate it. The potential is there. And the master numbers are those who were born on the 11th of any month, born on the 22nd of any month, and born on the 29th of any month. And then we look at who these characters are and why they operate in three ways. The character number 11 can function as 2, right? Because that's the sum. So he is a character 2. He can work his inner character, that is, when he works as 1, is that clear? And he works as a flat 11 when he says, I'm not going to go to 2 and I'm not going to go to 1, but I'm going to work the Uranus energy. 22 is the same character. He can operate his 4, the sum of the number. He can operate his inner 2. Then it transitions into simple. I used to say to the 22, they tend to transmute when the world doesn't understand them, and then they simplify their operation into 4 or 2. But they have Pluto in them. If they're operating as a 22, that's their third operation. That's the unknown energy in them. That's the teaching nature of 22. I'll talk a lot about that tomorrow night because it's the broadest scissors of consciousness. And the 29 character, he also works in three ways. It works on the 2s because 2 plus 9 is 11, 1 plus 1 is 2, always reduced to one digit. So it can work as a 2, it can work as an inner 9, and because it has a hidden 11, it can work as an 11. So this is what a single, double, or triple character looks like in numerology. The life of the single character is not simpler, so it does not mean that he has no function. And I must say that a person born with one number cannot move between numbers. So he can't move and he can't take a rest. Let's say he can't move from 5 to 6, but he grinds the whole coincidence in one single number, which means he is easier to figure out because he always works in one way, but he has no rest, so he can't hide in another number. I sometimes say, and perhaps rightly so, that there is greater karma for those born on single number days, but I say this in parentheses, because it is not the karma that is greater, but the easier it is know this number. So he cannot hide from others. He cannot deceive anyone, so to speak, that he is now operating differently. And then you have the 2 and the 3-way functioning man. Now take note of your character number. The numbers you shall pay close attention to during my storytelling journey. I'll start telling you what the number 1 means and where you can travel in this. Okay? And then do your own equations. Okay? So the one where you write your full date in black on the left, add it up. Write the amount next to it, then reduce the whole to one digit, and put the last number at the end of the number line in a triangle. I'll tell you in a moment why this will make a difference. So everybody do their own one, okay? Anyone else want me to do it? But it's very simple. You write it down. It's very important that you add the numbers one by one, and 0 has no value. Let me know when you're ready. Now, has anyone found a master number 11 or 22 ending in destiny? Because I can come up with a destiny like Aditi's. But now I'm going to write down another one, say yours. Not a master destiny, is it? 1970, 06, 21. This is Timea's dateline. She wrote it on the left. This should be treated as an equation. It adds 1 by 1. Now everybody do it for themselves. 1 plus 9 is 10, plus 7 is 17. It has no value. It has no value. 17 plus 6 is 23, 24, 25, 26, right? And then I'll write down 26 and I'll reduce it to 1 digit. That's 8, or Timea goes from 21 to 8. The question here was whether you've seen yourselves where that number comes out to 11, 22, or 33. So if you count it for someone else, you might have a number that comes out to, say, 29. In this case, you have to count 2 plus 9 is 11. However, we'll reduce that to a single digit as well, and we'll put the 2 at the end of the sequence number in a triangle. But let's mark it as a Uranus 2 with an 11 subscript. So it's an 11-ended Uranus 2. Then there can be 38. That's also a master fate. 3 and 8, that's 11. I'll write that down. That's another one of those index-ended. Then there could be a 47-end fate. The 47-end fate is also 11 per 2. Then I might come across someone who comes out at 22, in which case their serial number looks like this. So you write down the master number and next to it in a triangle the number 4. You might see 33-6 or 44-8. There is no person with a 55 destiny on earth yet. So the highest number that can be lived in a master destiny is 44. We are not there yet. The year 3900 is the year when the first person with a 55 master destiny will be born. People can go out together, so a 33 and a 22 master fate can go out together. I'm going to talk about the significance of these encounters. At the same time, a 38 can bring you out with a 28, for example. So there are certainly numbers who can bring out a 55, or 2 of 33 is a 66 master fate. There will be special tasks here. But for an individual person, it is the highest. In my 11 years of career, I have met about 4 people who had a 44 MasterCard, and they were young people born after the 2000s. It was important for you to see that it may not part of your formula, but with kids, with your own husbands, with moms, with dads, when you look at it, you may find. These are more special numbers, destinies that come with a different mission, master destinies. Obviously, that will be the material for tomorrow afternoon, or maybe Sunday, when I talk about destiny assignments. But now I'm going to start. Now I'm really going to take a big journey into numbers in a few minutes. I'm going to start with number 1, but you don't just have to look at if you're born on the 1st, then if you're born on the 10th, now you're looking at number 1. If you see a number on the right, now I'm going to start with number 1, for example. It's going to apply to you in the same way, the upper, middle, and lower range of that. That's why you need to see if you have a certain number on the left or right, okay? Any questions? Everyone got your character number is, complex character or simple. Are there people here with master tools? I mean master characters 11, 29, or 22. Were you born on the same day? He was born on that day, so there is good. I'm not going to ask you when and full date. I'm just going to analyze if somebody wants to do it in public. And then on Sunday we can do a full analysis if somebody wants to do it in front of the camera. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask you, okay? That's also a point of reference for me. Tell me. Yes, thank you. The 40 is not a master destiny, but that's how you describe 40 as a destiny assignment. Reduced to a single digit, you look like this in destiny. 44. That's 20, 20, and 33. There is no 55 fate. Okay? So it's not a master fate, but you've got 11 times 4, so to speak. So you got a 10 times red number because you got 10 x 4, or the highest octave of that. So you have a multiplier of 11 next to your number 4. That in itself means nothing today, but it will mean a lot the day after tomorrow. Same thing with 33 or 2020. Okay, that's the basics. That's what everyone has. Everybody knows whether it's a master number or a simple number or a compound number, and everyone can see their own number sequence, what destiny is supposed to follow. No questions here, right? Okay, I'm going to take a sip of water and then I'm going to start this characterization. Okay, so we'll start this story. It's going to sound a little bit like a fairy tale that I'm going to tell you over the next day and a half. This is going to be significant because when it comes to analyzing, you really need to know all the types of vibrations of numbers. Number 1 is the person who is born on any month. So number 1 is the person who is born on the 1st, 10th, 19th, or 28th of any month. Why are they the number 1 characters? Because you add them up and it comes out to 1. So character 1 is born on the 1st of any month. If it's the 10th, it's clearly character 1. If it's the 19th, 1 plus 9 is 10, 1 plus 0 is 1. 2 and 8 is 10, and 1 will come out of that. Or one character is 11, 21, 31, because remember, the character can operate on its internal number, for example, with you. Let's say I have a man born on 21 who is a character 3, true because it's 3, but so what? He'll go to 1, that is his internal number, and he'll immediately function as character 1. Why is he going over? Don't ask me that. Because it is easier to work with you, because only the ego works towards the resistance. The soul and the spirit always work towards the least resistance, and the soul feels very well that it has to work a number 1. And for it's easier to get along with you even though they don't know numerology. You'll see why your husband or wife, for example, works as an individual, being born on the 21st, because it's easier to get along with you and they don't know the numbers, so it's automatic. So if someone is born on the 11th, 21st, or 31st, they can function as a full-fledged number 1 based on their internal numbers. So even now, you will recognize it when I talk about number 1, right? And then let's get into how this system works. In number numerology, we have 3 leading characters. The first is the number 1 man. He's the person who's in the lower left of the matrix. So he's in the past column and on the physical level. He is in the lower left of the matrix on the physical plane and in the past column. The character of the leader means that he has come to lead someone. All number 1s are born on earth because they are meant to be the leader of a group or even a family. That is how it is supposed to work. So leading and guiding others is the karmic function of his or her number 1 character. A leading character means that you have been given such charisma and such energy that you feel in the company of each number 1 that they stand out from the crowd. And they stand out from the crowd because they wouldn't have been given a leader number if it wasn't his job to lead people. The ego is the main theme of the person with the leader character because ego is the number 1. Ego is my will. The planet of this number is the sun. The element is fire, obviously. You know the analogy of the sun and fire. Now imagine a sun king or sun queen. Because it makes absolutely no difference whether we are talking about a man or a woman, the number 1 is a royal character. That's why I say archetype. Archetype means the ancient principle. The ancient principle of a number 1 is the king and queen. So those born on the 1st, 10th, 19th, 28th of these numbers, they have actually come to us as kings and queens. And they've got this energy because they have a very strong charisma, and the solar planet, the fiery energy, is working in them like a volcano with tremendous power. So the Sun King and the Sun Queen occupy a very special place in our physical society because the moment this leading little character is born to us on earth, and you see, I'm going to talk about childhood as well, you immediately sense in him that he is a much more powerful character than the others. It is his ego that drives him and the themes of his own personality, that is, what is important for him to have power, to lead, and to control. He wants to assert from a very young age. That's why when you bring toddler number 1 home and put him in the crib, you perceive that he is more powerful than the others. He'll tell you when to eat. He'll tell you when to clean up. He'll tell you when to open the window, even though he's not talking yet. However, his little communication is that he has a stronger voice, more assertive. Usually when they are adults, they have a deep guttural voice. They speak loudly. That's when they function well. This is important. Now, if you are not familiar with the person who is character 1, father 1, mother 1, when they start functioning in the opposite way to their character, they function negatively. Then he has problems, then he is afraid, then he is sick, then he turns inward, and I will always start a number from above. So I'm going to talk about the best functioning of a number, the physical functioning of a number in the divine proportion first. And now for number 1, it's when a number 1 person is functioning well, they are living their role as king and queen. So vocal, decisive, leader, purposeful, charismatic, autonomous, authoritarian, individualistic. I can't add any more energy because I could only list analogies. So a person who you listen to, because you say he has something to say, he just comes into the room and you can sense that there is a fire around him. He has a very big ego. The number 1 person works well if he is defined by his ego. It doesn't overwhelm him. He doesn't overstep it. He doesn't go to 0. That's the enlightened one. That's a next topic. He works well when he is egotistic, strong-willed, determined, knows what he wants, and stands up for his goals. Look, if he wasn't like that, God wouldn't have allowed the incarnation of number 1 on earth. There is a task to be done. There is a herd to be led. There is a flock waiting for the number 1s. A number 1 cannot escape his fate by trying to get enlightened. So a number 1 works well if he has extraordinary charisma and you feel that what he has devised, he wants to accomplish. He leads the others and guides the others, and then back to the cradle. So this toddler that's in our crib, he's controlling the mom. How interesting that the mom doesn't set the order of the day. I asked the lovely mums or nursery workers. I've had nursery workers participating in the courses many times. And they group quite differently if they know the character of the 20 little children in their group. Because you have to allow the number 1 child to be a ruler. And the moment you take a newborn number 1 baby, well, this one kid is so not cute. This number 1 kid is a king who is red-headed because fire is his energy, screaming if he doesn't get what he wants right away. And now you can tell him, or the mother, or yourself, that every child needs to learn to adapt. Learn that dinner is at 10. Well, for number 1 children, it's not the case. Because if it was his job, he would have been born a number 2. You must learn to serve the king. You must learn that the king and queen deserve what they are born for. Do you feel me going into this number 1 in this 40 minutes? I want you to come in here. So a king or a queen almost appears in this room. I'm going to materialize it here until then, so it will go into your mind. Imagine a throne or a fairy tale. And in this fairy tale, there's always a king or a queen who reigns, and he's always sitting on a pulpit, right? A number 1 person sits on a throne all his life watching his subjects from above. In this case, he functions well. And to every number 1 person who hears this lecture, I say, you don't listen to your mother, your father, your husband, your wife to be more modest. You stop being modest. You should be the one who sits on the throne and divides the work. Of course, I'll show you when a despot falls, he becomes a tyrant. I didn't say that. Be a good king. Have charisma. Lead them, pull them, and you and the others must adapt to it. For do you think the universe would not have entrusted a worthy man to be a number 1? No. So he had to earn it, or as I say, It was thrown to him by the fate machine. So it was thrown to him. Live with it. And that if you have a person like that in your environment, give the king what he deserves. And there is such a saying, give to the king what is the king's. Let him rule and lead his people. In addition to ruling, it is also important for the individual child to maintain his authoritarian character. So the individual child needs the space, not just the spiritual, the physical space as well. In other words, it is not good for a number one child to be put in a room with a sibling because the number one child likes to be alone. Number one is about being alone, and below it is about loneliness. But then that's the wrong way to function. Up in the heights, he works well if he has his kingdom. He has a herd, his court, let's say. Everybody is jumping around. He's being looked after. You're bowing like a king, the father. The 40-year-old dad bows to the 3-month-old baby, but believe me, he does. He has his own room where he can be alone because he can relax when he's alone. People only come to him to serve him. When the servant comes, when the court jester comes, he always has a court jester. You know, in the tarot, you must know the symbols of the tarot. Number one loves. Even number 22 will be like that. Who will have a jester? That is, somebody in number 0, who nobody knows who he is. But he's the greatest henchman of these leader characters, to whom he entrusts all his secrets. I'm sure that every single person in every family has a jester as young as 3 months old. That is, someone who has really figured out that he is the king. He feels it. And the king keeps teasing this jester, but the jester sees right through him. So he loves him, he teases him, but he sees through him. Always look for a fool around number 1. It's usually the mother or the father in the first period. And obviously after that it can come in the form of friends and companions. The jester, he teases the person who serves him, but the jester sees through him, i.e. adores him. Importantly, the fool loves the number 1 person, the one character. Okay, let's see what happens when this little kid gets into the community. Child type number 1, the moment he is separated from his parent at the entrance to the nursery. Do you think he's happy or not happy to be separated from the mother? He's happy because he can rule. Because he or she sends one of the yard attendants home. The 3-year-old is already telling you to go, the plain one. Let's see an 11. He can go to deuce. So he's going to be a difficult character because he can be a 2. But a smooth one where we're just looking at the 1. One of the servants is sent home. The 3-year-old enters the community and stops at the door. And you can see that this child is looking for a situation where he can become a king immediately. It's usually in the middle of the room, standing in the middle and observing who he can control and what they can control. And his charisma is felt by the other kids, and the kids gather around him and he hands out tasks. And that child then feels comfortable. And I encourage the kindergarten teachers and the teachers to give that child a task that makes them stand out from the crowd. I don't know if you are familiar with the kindergarten operation where there is one child who says the poem and there are 5 or 6 behind him and they are contrasting the referent with 5. Don't put a single kid in the back where there are 5 or 6. Highlight him. Put him in the front so he's alone and he is the main act. Also, assign roles that suit the king and queen because he will love them. If he still doesn't love it, and if it's the opposite of what a relative does, or you now say, wow, I'm not like that, that's not working well. So you are not living your character. You're not living what you're supposed to be living. Come back. So that's functioning well if, you're giving the king what the king deserves. So he's going to lead, he's going to guide the children. He really likes to play games where each child involves the others, assigns tasks. But at the end, he puts the flag on top of the castle, for example. So he involves the others and he intervenes at the end of the game, so where the laurels can be reaped. And what is this one like? It's the way it's been all his life. So he's going to be the first station chief. He'll be the 8th grade or 5th grade starting secretary. He'll be in high school. I don't know what the titles are. So he'll go up easily. He'll always somehow get himself in the groove and work the energy so that he'll be elected leader everywhere immediately. And it's interesting because the individual, if you ask him at 18 or where you want to go to college, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to tell you if it's finance or I don't know. He wants to be a batik maker or a computer scientist, but he says, where I don't have a boss. Because he's the boss, no one is in control. If I can't have that, at least I'll be alone in a room because he won't tolerate either. So, when choosing a career, an individual should aim for a field where he is self-employed or entrepreneurial, i.e., he starts his own business, has no boss, is alone in his world, and no one to control him. Now, if an individual does get into a system where he is managed, because, say, at 23 with a fresh university degree, you don't immediately become a boss, although they take it very badly. They believe that they will become a boss in 6 months or a year. So it works in a way that a 20-year-old comes into your company. If you are a company manager with a different character and a 23-year-old comes in and has such charisma and ideas and determination that you are bursting with the idea of appointing him as a middle manager in 6 months. A year later, you appoint him as a senior manager. If you don't, believe me, he will leave the company, he will quit, and he will copy your company where he will be the leader because he feels very bad if he doesn't lead and manage. And the fact is that he can make himself sick if he lives his life as a gray sparrow or a gray eminence because he is out of character. So if you don't treat him like he's the king, he's going to slip away from you because he really has to lead. Okay, well, his motivation is nothing but to have rank and power. Rank, power, and leadership. And if he can't find it at work, believe me, he'll put all that solar energy into his relationship. If you're using solar energy and you don't have partner, you don't have a job, you're going to put it all on your child. So you cannot stop the manifestation of an energy by closing a life situation. The Sun King and the Sun Queen will always be there with that energy. I'll give you an example. A #1 person who was the CEO of a big company now retires. He could live this energy while running a big factory for 30 years. But he's retired. He's 60 years old, and now he's being entrusted with the garden at home to plant geraniums. He is not feeling well. Is that normal? Of course it is. So when you say to your parents, dear father, dear mother, please accept that 30 years have passed, you've run the company, and now be humble and go out and plant geraniums. That's not his way. That's why stereotypes don't make sense, and how easy it is to get to know a character. Here's for this parent or grandparent. Create a situation where they can continue to be kings, and he will die king. Send him to a retirement home. Believe me, he'll be the leader in 6 months. So some kind of community or the family should make him feel that he is still king or queen. Because, by the way, the worst thing that happens to leader characters is when they are taken out of a high position, say by retirement, and they say that silly line, well, it's time to rest. He wants to die a king. It's not how kings die. They will not die saying, I retired and I am handing over the crown. But he wants to sit there and grow old the throne. And it is your responsibility, if you know numerology, either to your parents or to your brothers and sisters, always give that rank, because he may not know numbers. Okay, so his motivation, rank, power, attention, fire, energy extraction, etc. His childhood is discussed, his job is discussed. I did not highlight Arias, rather, that he will always raise above and always lead. And then we look at how the woman and the man with a #1 character. Because the #1 is a yang energy. The yang is the energy of will, the man. He has the firepower. If someone is born into character 1 as a man, that's a very good karma. Because this fiery energy is there in a man's body, and what society expects of men today, to be leaders, to be decisive, is there in this man. And it's very analogous, so he can operate it very well. It's very interesting that if the man is, let's say, I'm still talking about the male, let's say he doesn't have a leadership position, and he does not have a pleasant appearance, for the king should have a royal appearance. It's not that anybody can be a king. You don't have the money. I'll talk about, because money later, so he likes to live like a king. But let's say that the number one man doesn't have these things for a period of time. He still wants to be seen as such. So he tries to maintain that royalty, even if he has to borrow money for that. Or if he gets into a situation where his modesty would reveal him, he will not show up. He'd rather not go to those meetings. I often mention that some men are born short. Weird thing in life that the king is tall and broad, usually with strong bones. So some men are masculine. Unfortunately, women will be too, but that's another story. Let's stick to men. So men with strong bones, pithy cheeks, furrowed brows, determined, regal, straight backs, and say a man may be born into some characters as short, insignificant, but they don't care. They might not care at all that his appearance doesn't show the fiery energy. He'll march and walk among us with energy like he's a 6-foot energy bomb. By the way, the Viktor Orban character is like that, a 31 person. 31 prime minister. And he has a number one energy. If you watch a press conference, for example, you can really feel it, but he's a short man. And yet he brings that fire energy. And it's worth looking at some men, by the way, how they compensate with so many things for what is otherwise invisible from the outside, but which burns and burns inside them, and that has to come out. And from now on, you will be helped by numerology, because you will not suppress a number one person or tell them to please be more modest. He must not be modest, but I repeat, he must be a man on a throne. Okay, but when this male energy is born into a female body, it is difficult, because on the one hand, the yang energy of the will also manifests itself in the woman's appearance. Many individual women have masculine features, not feminine curves. They're more heavy-boned, their walk is very determined, so they don't have the yin female energy, which is fine, but they're just not the classic female type. That being said, many individual women, believe me, because of the lion analogy, will make themselves look very beautiful and feminine. But when they speak, they are immediately exposed because they are loudly spoken and firm. So you can recognize the number one person. I don't ask around now to find out if there is a number one person here, but I tend to watch. When I meet someone who comes to me for analysis, the way they walk, the way they sit down, the way they pull out their chair, the way it makes a noise, please. Because the king and queen have arrived, and you can love them, you can dislike them, but I say to you, be happy while the king is king, because he's about to lose his rank, he's about to be shut up and fall into the hourglass, and then again, when he goes quiet, he becomes shy, and the king falls from his throne, then he's in negative territory. Then you can feel sorry for him. So even if you are irritated by this personality, I mean, why shouldn't you be? There will be characters that don't fit with the number one. Now, don't get mad. You know, God has entrusted them with that. The one who is born as character one may be in a city. Let's say we're in a city of 60,000 people. We're in the city of Ager now. There are, let's say, 2,000 people or 5,000 people born into character one. They are the leaders of this city. They have come to purify its royal energy. They don't live in the same place. They don't meet each other. But the karmic task of each character will be to purify the ego. So it's an entrusted role that needs to be done well. So from now on, don't suppress it. Laugh at it and say, why isn't he modest? Well, he is 60 years old. Don't be a modest number one. Do the thing until you die. Be a king and rule well so that we can look up to you, so that we can follow you, because you have been entrusted with a great thing. Okay, you have a problem if a number. One woman can't find fulfillment in her profession. So if she finds that business or that activity that she's the leader, she's looked up to because she's really good, she'll be really good at it. Because motherhood and being in a relationship requires a good dose of energy, number 2, but number 1 doesn't. So he can't adapt that much to accommodate feminine energy, to accommodate your seeds, to accommodate the child. So that's not her type of energy. So she works well when she slowly builds a system. He's at the head of it, he is successful in it, and her children are her employees. And she leads them, their mum. Regardless, many number 1 women have children. Of course, have children if you want to. I am not discouraging you from topics, but it will not be the crystallization of your life. You're not going to find it in baking plum pies and dressing the Christmas tree for 4.5 hours, because that's the energy of a 2 and a 6. But you are a 1. You bake it. Listen, I've heard of a 1. He couldn't wait to fly them out. But that's just for me to say in the analysis, because obviously at home and to the world, I wouldn't dare say, I couldn't wait for the kids to fly out and go to college. But she really is looking forward to it. So she does it, he raises them, there will be a Christmas tree, and some people have luxurious holidays and beautiful dinners, etc. It may be all office, because it's very typical that he's being a king there too. I say, that's not where the divine sitting is going to be. That's not where the cool girl is going to be. To stand back and say, I'm home now. Not in the motherhood, not in the adaptive part of the relationship, but mostly in the sitting on the throne, being fanned, having her nails painted by 3, being adored by the court, being called this and that. She's handing out her favors to everyone, and a life goes by. Now then, I ask you, can't she love? If she doesn't need peers, she just wants to control and can control from above? Mostly yes. She just has a weakness, and it's her reflection. And that's when a number 1 woman 1, and I'm going to touch on the relationship here, woman 1 meets man number 1, for the only energy in whose light this king who has so far contemplated his subject, let's say you go to a party or go to a, I said, are there still discos? Do people still go to discos? There used to be discos. So you go to a nightclub or a social club and you see somebody standing somewhere in the corner alone. Alone at an exhibition or a cinema, there will always be some people. So you say to a 2, have you been to that exhibition? And the 1 says alone. Of course you've been alone, because you feel good everywhere alone, even going on holiday alone. In fact, he's outraged if you call him 3 days in the holiday and he'll say, why are you bothering me? So 3 days have gone by, they don't even notice, because he's so comfortable with himself and himself. Imagine you see a king or a queen at some event. He's actually energetically looking to see if there's anybody in his court who might be a match for him as a couple. But anyway, I'm playing with my face. It might look a bit too much. It's because I want to show you that he works well at times like this. So she's at this time when, oh, where's my partner? And energetically, he can sense a similarly strong partner. And the king and the queen can fall very much in love. And I must say that there are very good and long marriages between the king and the queen, because the 2 big shots, they love to bathe in each other's company. They say of each other that, yes, the only man I did not receive into my court was the king of another realm, and I gave myself to him. It is very interesting that in such a marriage, many times this is the city of Agar. We can hear the churches now. So in such marriages, children are born with a weaker, more delicate, ethereal, energetic nature. We have not discussed these energies yet. I won't even shoot the jokes. But let's say a little number 2 child is born here. Who is the opposite of 1? He's quiet, he's subtle. And these two talk to each other like, give me the salt shaker. Did you eat the soup? And it's normal for them to be louder, more assertive, but be careful because there are the delicious, ethereal children sitting there. So then you have to take it a little bit easy. I see many strong characters born into the marriage of a king and queen, these typical Italian families where everyone is loud, determined, and everyone has not a separate room but a separate realm, and they live this wonderful energy. So they have their own weakness, their own energetics. There will be 2 other lead characters for numerology. Even with him, he gets on very well with 1. So with leading definite characters, he comes out not seeing them as a rival, but as a match for himself. It doesn't make him feel oppressed. He says, yes, then I'll form some sort of community with him. A good relationship model is one that likes to live in solitude. I mean solitude in a good sense. So he is not insistent on always having a partner. He is not relationship dependent. And he also postpones mate selection in time. He postpones having children or marriage until his 30s or 40s. He doesn't even care about the ring, these holidays, these celebrations. I say, if this great flaming love comes into his life, he might say, well, I'll marry you, or he'll be your spouse. But otherwise, it's not a defining theme for him. And when he is left alone, so his relationship ends, or he is widowed, he can live alone for a very long time, even for the rest of his life. Many individuals end their lives by saying that the best stage of my life is my last stage, when I live alone and don't have to adapt to anyone. And when you say that, that's when it works well. Your relationship with money is discussed. She's a lioness, and her whole wardrobe, her makeup for women, her car, the furnishings of her house, everything is gorgeous. So it exudes a royal look. Red is her color, by the way, and orange. They often have dimpled hair, they have heavy makeup, they drive a red car, but at least a flashy one. So I live in a small flat on the 8th floor of a housing estate, and I use public transport. It's not the way of life for a number 1 person. They might live that way, but they don't like it that much. So they become megalomaniac, but they have a lot of plans in their heads to break out of that. If they don't succeed, they're going to live out their number 1 energy in something. So that's what you have to look for if the individual is poor or has no leadership position. Then where does he live out his number 1 energy? So be honest with yourself about where you put the queen role or the king role. Because if the answer is, Lord God, I am nowhere, then your soul is sad, and you have to admit that to yourself. Because then you are not living like a king. So you have to get it somewhere, either from a partner, so a man or a woman, or from your child, or from your workplace. But not being king in any area of life, even though you are one, will make you sick in the long run. It's very bad for your soul. Okay, and now comes this particular hourglass I've been telling you about. This particular fall, I'm going to show you this for each number, and I'm going to explain and tell you why I named the fall of the number the hourglass. The hourglass looks something like this, at least my hourglass, which has no mouth on the top or bottom, so it doesn't close at the top or the bottom. And in case of number 1, I've sketched what it looks like when it's working well. However, each character is given a life situation by God or the universe for each and every one cyclically when they fall out of their role. It is not because you have functioned poorly, underfunctioned, been evil, brought past life karma. It's all spiritual lore. It's a law that every now and then the universe will test you and slam you into the hourglass and take away your character's top function. What we have just outlined, that the number 1 works positively, we have now learned, we have brought fire energy into this room. Collapse is a spiritual law. The fact that you used to think that bad things were happening to you because you were some kind of fierce evil, that you were functioning very badly, you have to forget that self-inflicted guilt. The law is that it has to happen. That means you have to fall down from the upper realm. I call that the age of initiation for every number. It's one thing if you stay in it for a long time, because that's your responsibility. But the fall must always happen in a cyclical way. The initiation is always done in a way that is relevant to you, to your character. God will take it away from you, but only for a time. In your opinion, what is the greatest pain and fear of a number one? The losing of what they fear most. His leadership, his rank, and his power. I write this down for you. Leadership, rank, and power. That is his greatest fear, that he will fall from the throne, that he will have to go down to the subjects and become nothing. That's his greatest fear, because it's always the fear of character that happens. Now you can say what you fear will happen. We'll get rid of these out by the end of day 3, so we'll throw out these spiritual phrases. It's not happening to you because you're afraid. It's happening to you because it's your fear of character, and it would happen even if you weren't afraid. Because that's the law. So it's a big disgrace, and it's always going to be like this. You're going to lose it from time to time. Then 2 things may happen. Either this character stops himself in the middle, that is, in the middle of the hourglass, and says, it is my initiation, I'm going to be humble. So I'm going to take my initiation with humility. I'm going to kneel before God and say, okay, I can lose my rank, my power, my leadership. Because I know that if I'm humble in this age, I'll get it back. That's the law. If you accept your losses with humility, the universe will always send you back to a higher level. So not to where you started from, but to an even higher level. That is also a law, you may ask. That once you've stopped yourself in the middle with humility, the initiation never comes again, but yes, it will, for everyone, including the yogi, even the non-intellectual and the enlightened. The question is, how long will it stay? But it's always cyclical, because life is a curve. You are here, and you are here, and then you are here again, and then you are here again. The events of life are cyclical. By being a meditative person, by being a spiritual person, you will take this lower worlds or lower stages more easily because you have a peaceful state of mind. But still, events happen. And yes, I've also got a couple of lectures out there on YouTube where I talk about meditating and doing exercises, and that good things will happen to you. And then I'll correct it by the end of the lecture. And I'm sure you can see it from your own life. Well, if you don't do any spiritual practice, you don't see it. Even then, that's the law, and it applies to him too. But he doesn't know that. But we had an expectation that I would be spiritual and apply the law of the secret and listen to Esther Hicks and then read Tolle. And these are very good things. But when Santi Radias, who's a teacher of 8th level, says, if you want to be a more successful person, you don't meditate, you go to Napoleon Hill's lectures. Because he wrote the book titled Think and Grow Rich. You will have to attend a different seminar. If you meditate and you're a spiritual man and you expect that this will give you the dream man and the money and the promotion and the beauty and the weight loss and the healing and God knows what plans you have, that's a delusion. The meditative man is on this sinus curve, but you know where? About here, in the middle of the curve, with a peaceful contemplation like this. And when a number one character loses something, say his rank, or he gets fired from his job, or he is left as a man, leaving a number one man, cheating on him, humiliating him, hurting him, or it turns out you're having an affair with someone else. So you cheated him, don't do that to him. So obviously you shouldn't cheat, deceive, humiliate anybody, but it's going to leave a big mark on the king with the number one type person. But this is what will happen to him. However, if a number one person meditates, there will not be as much tragedy and as much pain in him as if in a number one person who does not meditate. So I just want to tell you, as a spiritual law, that there is no spiritual practice that will interfere with your destiny in such a way that only good things will happen to you. In fact, as you open the consciousness scissors from above, greater miracles will come, but also greater tragedies. Active meditators who have lived a spiritual life, you see that you open the consciousness and do it. It's not like a lottery jackpot, a marriage something, but even more amazing than that. Let's say lottery jackpots, right? So even more wonderful things, but also bigger initiations from below. It's just that somehow the meditation brought you into the heart center. So not the 6 minutes of meditation itself or the hour and a half a day, but what it caused you to do in your waking consciousness. That kindness, that serenity, that willingness to love other people, your heart, that shows up in you in spiritual practice. And you don't become one of those disdainful, haughty ones, but somehow in the middle you see that there is enough place for everyone, right? So that even the evil one has a place, even the harmful one has a place, and somehow you see the whole world from there. And that becomes the essence of this middle realm, and this is the time of humility, to look at your own life from the middle, that you've been fired, abandoned, and me, says the arrogant ego, I mean the number one, yes you, because now is the time. This is your initiation period. Another standard question you have is, and how long does this last? Well, it can take 5 minutes, and when you're humble, you may be back in a couple of days. It's wonderful to get a call from your boss who fired you saying, sorry, let's talk about it. And sure enough, it can go on for years. Now that's something that's up to you. So the initiation will come. What you can do is not to keep your energy level down, but to come here in the middle, and you can ground yourself, and in the long run you can have a say in events here if you have entered a zero state. There you can have a say. But by being humble for a minute or two and immediately wanting everything to be given to you, you have to live it.